without further ado, I'm handing over the mic to Principal Ms. Madhu Khanna, who will introduce our guests today.
Today we celebrated Mother's Day, so I know Mother's Day falls on Sunday, but I wish you all a Mother's Day. GIIS East Coast is now a candidate school for IBPYP, and we are already accredited with CLSP program. So we are offering international curriculum right across all levels. So I take this opportunity to introduce you to Professor Ralph Tabberer, our keynote speaker for the session, who will be sharing some great insights on the international education. Professor Tabberer is a veteran in the field of education with 40 years of experience. As a former Director General of Schools in England, under the Ministry of Tony Blair, Professor Tabberer was responsible for managing the performance of 23,000 schools in UK. Prior to that, Professor Tabberer supervised UK's national strategy for teacher recruitment, teacher training and modernization of the school workforce. Professor Tabberer is also an advisory board member for Global Schools Foundation and provides his precious guidance to keep our schools on a rapid path of growth. I request Professor Tabberer to come to the podium and address the audience.
I confess I'm a huge fan of the Global Schools Foundation and the Global International Schools. Huge fan, and I'll try and explain why later. I have been in education a very long time, as a teacher, as a superintendent, as a researcher, even as a government official, and I've had some astonishing experiences. It is very, very scary sitting across the cabinet table from Tony Blair when you're responsible for a public service that he wants to be perfect. And his three priorities in government, he said, were education, education, education. So when I started out in education, I started out as a teacher, but after a couple of years I got asked to help with a research study. And I grabbed the chance because it was a research study into how children learn, particularly at age 16 to 19. The fascinating thing about that was that the study, I was given 2 3/4 years to do the study. And I could research what schools were doing, I could research what students were doing, all that was said. And at the end of it, I could publish. And mine was maybe, in the world, one of 2 or 3 studies published that year. And they led to giving people advice in schools about what to do. Today, almost 40 years later, because of the internet, communications, and the information age, I could do that study in 2 3/4 weeks. Now, let's turn it into looking at this as a parent. How do we help our children to grow up and know what's true and what's false? How do we teach them that? And I think the truth is that that's very difficult to do now. It matters to me hugely. They've got to have that ability as they go through life. How are they going to get it? I think one of the answers is actually the IB curriculum. The IB curriculum is a very impressive piece of design work, because in the IB they've designed something which is not just about subjects, maths, English, science, social science, arts, they're all in there. But they've also tried to organize the learning so that as teachers, we have to deal with issues more deeply. We have to help children inquire into them and get under their skin. The IB has this habit of creating these big diagrams with probably too much information. But the idea usually is they're saying we're doing all of these things at once. That's why they use the concentric circles. So unlike some curricula, the IB has, the science, the arts, the mathematics, the social studies, the language, right there at the middle, but it also does things where it explores particular themes, and it gets children doing exhibitions, it gets children doing action, it gives children agency. Now, actually, the options available to children are slightly different. You can, in a way, what worries me is you can bring up your child to be a spinner, somebody who maybe works in politics. I worked with a lot of politicians. I was a civil servant, but they certainly had a lot of people working alongside them whose job it was to spin the news. Your child can grow up to be, and this is frightening, you can grow up to live in an echo chamber. To be one of these groups that have a view about the world, a political view, a negative view, a dangerous view, where they live in an echo chamber. In other words, the only people they ever talk to are people who think the same. Now, this is why I love the IB. It's also why it's down here on the bottom, international mindedness, this opportunity to see beyond your current situation, to help our children, I think particularly in societies like ours, where we're in diverse environments, maybe not the ones where we were born, and our children are growing up in those environments, understanding the international perspectives on things. It's not in the traditional curricula. The IB is trying to make it a solid, strong part of the current curriculum. There's strong subjects in IB, but then there's this ability to explore international ideas. I was going through, IB provides teachers with lots of guides. If you're going to be a teacher of IB, you have to get better and better at being a teacher. And it's because teachers need to build into the curriculum things, not just the existing programs, but also go through questions like, in a unit of inquiry, form. What's the form like in this situation? What's the features of what we're looking at? What can be observed? What can be identified? What can be categorized? You're engaging with something, exploring the factors that there are in this. You're looking at the functions of things. How do things work? You're looking at causation. Why does this happen? You're looking at change. How is it changing? You're looking at connection. How is it connected to other things? You're looking at perspective. What are the points of view? Responsibility. What's our responsibility as individuals? It's about reflection. How do we know these things, and how do we treat it? I mean, compared with the way curricula used to be organised, this is, more and more sophisticated, and it's where education should be going. It can't just stand still and deliver what we used to deliver. We've got to challenge ourselves as educators to go into this space. And that's what the IB is doing. IB is just, for me, these words, and they're deep. It's about subjects, it's about depth of thinking, it's about introducing concepts and exploring them, it's about learning for life, it's about working internationally, it's about working inquiry. That, I think, is much closer to a curriculum for the modern world than the other curricula that are available. There's lots of schools that will do the British curriculum or other curricula, and they try to add these as extra. IB tries to put it right in the middle of it and construct it and make it more integral. So that's the ambition. You probably don't see this at the moment from here, but GSF is actually becoming, I think, potentially one of the 2 or 3 biggest chains in the world of schools. It started from schools you know and familiar with, but it's always been innovative. It's always been prepared to do programs and explore not just the subjects, but also the holistic education, the 9 gems. It's been prepared to look at happiness and how we make our... It's been prepared to do new projects. It's prepared to look at enterprise. It's been prepared to look... And that's really healthy because that shows they've got that habit. And it's always a group that's not just the school you're in, but a lot of backroom people, whether they're marketing colleagues or they're education advisors or they're people making the back office work. I've worked in probably the biggest group in the world, and he's in the top 3, but this is actually moving into an even more impressive place. One of the things they're doing, which is very rare around the world, is they're creating IB options for families at a good price. We probably think it's too expensive, but it's a lot better price. GIIS school, they're working with global best practice curricula and qualifications. They recognise the importance of getting qualifications, of having validation. And very unusually, they're offering the opportunity of curricular choice within a school. This is a distinctive thing. It's started to become common to all the schools. So you could do CBSE, move to IB, you can do Cambridge, you can shift about, and that's unusual. It used to be you needed to change school to do it. The GSF has, just strings of really impressive results. I think so far it's had, Harsh, you'll tell me if this is wrong, 12 world toppers in IB. That includes the 5 highest IB performers in Singapore last year. Not 5 of the 5 highest from the GSF group. Its scores its average scores in IB are now averaging, I think it's at 37. And I hope that they're going to teach people how to discern truth as well. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
So, Ralph, the first question is, how can we as parents support students in IB?
Your engagement with your child in their learning is even more important than school. Even the family that sits down in the evening together and has dinner together, the children do better than if they don't. The conversation of a family. One of the reasons that lots of Indian schools and families are now doing better than the West is because in the West, that connection between that conversation of education inside the family isn't as strong culturally.
I think another fundamental question is, how do assessments work in IB?
IB expects the assessment to be really an assessment at the end of every unit of inquiry, and the school's working now on an expectation that we'll be creating a report card each term. You will, at the top of that report card, you'll get a written piece about the progress of your child.
Thank you everyone for being here. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you very much.